so the big question is, should you buy a big fancy camera, or is the one in your hands or your pocket good enough? My name is Cynthia and welcome to my photography studio. Today I'm going to teach you how to stage, shoot, and edit like a pro. So I know many of you guys are taking up photography because it's a passion, or because you started your own business and you want to show off all those amazing products, or you're just bored in the house and you want to show off some amazing food that you've been making. Whatever the reason is, I got you covered. If this is something that you're into, pretty please hit that subscribe button and let's get started. Okay, so first I need to tell you about this editing software that all the professionals use. Basically the gold standard for photography and editing photos. It's called Lightroom. And the best part of all is that they have a free version in the App Store. So go ahead and search for it, download it. It's called Lightroom. Today we're gonna shoot my coffee because it's right here, and I made these amazing espresso chocolate muffins. They are so good. I'm setting up my scene, adding a board to my table, pulling a chair to prop my other backdrop against it, added some muffins, flowers, napkins, and a black foam board to help absorb the light. I'm feeling a little dark and moody vibe today. Alright, now we're ready. We're gonna go into Lightroom because it has all these fancy bells and whistles that I want to show you guys. Now I want you to think of this app as a stepping stone into professional photography. One, because all the pros use it, and because there's some settings in there that once you understand it, you're gonna feel way more confident behind the camera. So let's open up the app and hit the camera. Now on the top, you can adjust the size of your image. This is helpful if you're shooting for IG stories and you want it perfectly framed, or you can just shoot it as is and crop later. Next, you have a timer option that allows you to go hands-free, which I'll do later today. Then hit this grid option, which can help you with alignment, making sure your horizon is straight if you're shooting landscape, or if you're shooting food, it can help you with your composition. And this last function is the clipping mode, which shows you which parts of your photo is blown out. Now at the very top, switch your photo from JPEG to DNG. This basically means you're shooting in RAW, which is a bigger file size that holds a lot more information for when we go to edit our photos later. Now on the bottom is the good stuff. Hit Pro because we're all going to be professionals today. On the left is your exposure, which affects the brightness of your image, so just stick your finger and drag it all the way to the right, or drag it all the way to the left. Okay, so next we move into seconds, which is basically your shutter speed. Now this is a very, very important concept to understand in photography. Shutter speed affects how sharp or blurry your images get, as well as how much light is let into your image. Now, imagine you have the most adorable kids or the most adorable pet, and you want to take adorable pictures of them. So what do? You want a higher shutter speed so that you're essentially freezing the moment. You're freezing the frame. And when you freeze the frame, you get a really sharp image. So let's take this coffee for example. If I shoot this at a lower shutter speed, I'm at the risk of a blurrier image because the shutter is opening and closing over more time, and it's not freezing the moment. Now you might be wondering, well, why would I want a blurry photo? You can actually create a really cool effect to get motion blur like this, or this. You would just have to shoot it on a tripod. Okay, now let's take the same coffee shot at a much higher shutter speed at 320th of a second. See how everything is in focus? It's good to go. Now the only downside to having a high shutter speed is that it doesn't allow that much light to come in, which means you're gonna have a darker photo. So the lower the shutter speed, the brighter the photo, higher the shutter speed, the darker the photo. So there are other ways we can compensate for this, which is in the next setting, ISO. This is your camera's sensitivity to light. Think of it as an artificial light source that's within your camera. Like if you're in a dark restaurant, you can bump up your ISO if your image is coming out too dark. The only downside to a high ISO is that your image will become more grainy, more noisy, and a little bit less sharp. So you just really want to find that balance. Now there's one more function that affects light called your aperture. Adjusting your aperture is how you can get that blurry, beautiful background with your subject crystal clear. But since Lightroom doesn't have that feature yet in the mobile app, I'll go over this in a different video. So bear with me, we're almost done going over these settings. Alright, so the next function is your white balance. You know when you're outside and you're trying to take a selfie, you're trying to take a good photo and it just has this blue hue to it? Or when you're eating inside a restaurant trying to take a picture of your food, but it has this like yellowish orange glow because of all the restaurant lighting inside. Well, this is where you fix that, the white balance. If you're indoors, you can hit the tungsten or fluorescent setting, or hit the daylight or cloudy option if you're outside. The cool thing about this feature is a custom picker tool where you can choose a white part in your scene, and then Lightroom will use that as a guide to adjust your white balance. Now the next setting is your focus. Go ahead and play around with this and you can adjust what you want focused in your photo. Alright, so now that we've gone through all of our settings, let's go ahead and switch out our scene. I'll add my cup of coffee and we'll pour some milk into it. After that, we'll go straight into editing. So here I set my shutter to a high shutter speed at 250th of a second so I can capture movement and get a super sharp image. Next I want my ISO pretty low at 250 while still maintaining enough light in my photo. Then I set the timer to 5 seconds, grab my milk, and let the camera do its thing. Alright, so now that we've taken our photos, let's hop into the editing mode in Lightroom. So for this beginner tutorial, we're just going to play with the free settings. Now let's start with the crop. I'm cropping for Instagram, so that'll be 4:5. For this photo, I want to make sure my subject, the coffee, is right in the middle. Next we'll hop over to light. I like to play with the exposure first, brighten up the overall image. Add a little contrast. Then I'm going to decrease the highlights. Okay, so right now when I look at this image, I'm getting kind of dark and moody vibes. A little sexy, a little mysterious, so we're gonna keep it dark. Now let's play around with the tone curves. If you're unfamiliar with this setting, I highly recommend playing around in here to deepen the contrast in your photos or lighten the shadows. First, I like to make 3 points along the graph. This gives you greater control over the tonal range and contrast in your photos. Now remember, a little goes a long way, so be careful here. Your photos could look weird real quick. Now I like to make a very soft S shape. So now we'll play with the whites and make the stream of milk pop ever so slightly. Then we get to the shadows. See, if I bring this all the way up, it completely changes the vibe of the photo, making it brighter. But that's not what I'm going for today, so I'll decrease it. And I'll also decrease the highlights, making it even moodier. Now let's hop over to color. Here I can change the temperature, making it more blue or more warm like a sunny afternoon. Okay, so saturation and vibrance affects the colors in your photo. Saturation basically intensifies every single color, while the vibrance just kind of brings out some of the muted tones in your image. Now the best way to play around with this is to drag it all the way to the right and all the way to the left so that you can really see what kind of effect it's making. You can also take it back and make your photo black and white if that's what you're going for. I'm going to decrease my saturation and vibrance ever so slightly. Now remember when I told you to change the file from JPEG to DNG? Well, this is why. You can really mess around with your colors now. Now for instance, if I wanted to isolate a certain color, let's say blue, I can literally take the blue hue and tone it down and take it completely out of the photo. Or if I wanted to increase it, I could literally just increase that particular color. Let's take this green for example. I think it's popping out just a little too much, so I'm only going to decrease the green in my photo while leaving all the other colors the same. Remember, there's no wrong way or right way to do this. Just do what makes you happy, do what makes you feel right at the time. Now we get into effects. This texture tool affects the appearance of textures in your photo, while clarity changes the contrast around the edges of objects, making them sharper or softer. I'm upping the texture and clarity just a little bit. Now we get into vignette. This makes the outer edges of your photo lighter or darker. I always love adding the tiniest vignette on my photos when I want to make the center subject really pop. Now remember, a little goes a long way, so a -9 here looks just right. Best part of all, if you did all this and you don't like your settings, you can just hit reset here. Or on the contrary, if you really like the edit you just made, just hit copy and paste and apply it to the rest of your photos and you're done editing. So go to the top right hand side, hit the 3 dots, tap copy settings and hit the check mark. Now go find another photo you like, tap the 3 dots again and hit paste settings. Wow, this is looking pretty good. Okay. If you hold down on your screen, you can see the before and after. Now after I copy and paste, I like to go back through and make some minor adjustments. This photo feels a little too dark for me, so I'll bring back up the shadows and make it a little warmer. Now when you're done editing, go to the top, hit the arrow, and tap Export to Camera Roll to finish. Okay, so what do you guys think about the quality of these photos? I mean, it's pretty darn good, right? If you're just starting out in photography, I'd highly recommend playing around with the camera in your pocket before making a big purchase, because chances are you can create some pretty dope content. Get used to it, have fun with it. If you're feeling a dark and moody vibe, do that. If you're feeling bright and airy, do that. Do whatever makes you happy. The best way to learn is to just practice, practice, practice. So, with that, I hope you guys all learned something new today. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, pretty please hit it now. Leave me a comment, show me some love. And if you want to connect on Instagram, my handle is @Sinise. Thanks again for joining in this week in my studio. I'm about to go crush these muffins, have myself a glass of coffee. And with that, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.